Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of PolyAI's podcast. Today, I have the great pleasure of welcoming Brian Jeppesen, who was our first client in the US many, many years ago. So, Brian, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you. Great to be here. Great to see you
Yeah,
again, Nikola.
absolutely, always. And I look forward to seeing you in person in a few days here in London. But I have a few sentences kind of like about you and kind of like your history. I think, you've been working at Fertitta Entertainment, which listeners may know for Golden Nugget casinos and all of the restaurants under the Landry's dining umbrella. But you're also one of the directors on the board of the Contact Center AI Association, and you've previously been an executive at Alorica, one of the largest BPOs on the planet. So I think I really look forward to picking your brain on a lot of these topics, but I'd love maybe just to kind of kick off with our story and how we started working together. So I'll pass it over to you. I have call recording ready at hand as well, but yeah.
Yeah, great, great intro. So yes, I've been in the business for 35 plus years. I think I stopped counting, and I tell people I realize that just because you've been doing something for a long time doesn't mean you're good at it. Um, but I've been playing golf for longer than that, and I'm still not good at golf.
Okay.
But it just means you're old when you've been doing something that long.
I
Uh,
haven't yet started playing golf, so I look forward to being bad at it one day, but yeah.
Okay, yeah, I I can teach you how to be bad at golf. Um, yeah, my story, when we 4.5 years ago, almost 5 years ago now, when we kind of connected and looking at solutions because we couldn't handle calls coming out of COVID. I couldn't staff, couldn't hire people, had high abundance, and we're just looking for solutions and told my CFO this is the amount of revenue we're potentially losing because we can't answer. We're banning 40 to 50% of our revenue calls. What can we do? And he said, what do you want to do? I said, let's explore AI stuff. So I looked at a lot of different solutions. I was out there. Um, Most everybody, 4.5 years ago, the voice quality wasn't like it is today. And I wanted something that was a good experience for my customers. I didn't want a robot. I didn't want it to sound uh, like everybody else had had bad experiences with AI. And there's it's funny now because I say everybody wants AI, but nobody wants BS, right? And there's still a lot of it out there. So I would look for a great solution, a great voice, somebody that people wanted to connect with. And you gave me a sample of, the first one you did. I'll let you play the one that really hooked me, but. The first one you did, it was a very nice British female voice did, reservations for my restaurants for Saltgrass Steakhouse, and I'm like, that's really nice, but can you do something more Texan? And so I
Yeah.
don't know if you want to share. You want to share what you came back the next day with?
Absolutely. And I mean, you guys are headquartered in Houston. My father-in-law lives there, so I'm like well familiar. And I think that we maybe what's probably the corniest demo we've ever had for anyone. I think I do remember a big howdy on your website, which we all laughed about. Well, I'll let people hear this thing, but it was something.
Howdy. Thanks for calling Saltgrass Steakhouse, Amarillo. How can I help you today?
Hey there. Can I reserve a table for tomorrow night?
Sure thing. What time would you like to come in?
And I remember that kind of like initially you guys went to build something with a partner in the US, and then in the end, I think you told me that Rick, the CFO, and you were kind of like, hey, if you can get it up and running quickly, like you'd go with us, and we I think got it up and running in what about 2 weeks, something like that.
Yeah, it was at that point. That's what convinced me. I said, okay, you can give me the voice I want. That was a little extreme, but I said, Here's 10 calls. Here's 10 calls on my best agent. Can you make it sound like my best agent?" And you gave me a voice that sounded just like my best agent. And I said, "How soon can we do this?" I think it was 4 weeks from the time we said, "Let's do this." I had 40,000 calls that were very simple PBX calls,
Yeah.
FAQs, transfers that I needed help with, and we went live with that. Like I said, I think it was about 4 weeks, and day one it handled 87% of those calls, and it dropped my
Yeah.
abandons to 10%. And it was a huge success.
Yeah, yeah, no, and I think that from that point on, like Vegas has been a great part of our journey. So that was something that we're always really, really thankful for. And we've just had so much fun working with you, building out the use case much more deeply into kind of like full reservations. And I think, especially when you look back at that time, I think you were a real pioneer in wanting to use AI for it, because I think there was a moment around the ChatGPT moment when the situation flipped and it was like, why are you not doing AI, right? But I know how hard you had to work to bring everyone on board. And I think that that's a real testament to kind of like both you and the organization back at that time.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it was new stuff 4.5 years ago. Now everybody's wanting it, right? But
Yeah.
back then it was. I feel like yeah, we pioneered that. We explored, like I said, we've got a lot more detailed, a lot more complex, full reservations, books over 100 reservations a day, makes all kinds of extra revenue for us without the need to speak to an agent. And ultimately, what it does is it gives my customers an opportunity to get their issue taken care of immediately, quickly, without the need to wait for a live agent. So, but we also give them an option if they want to speak to a live agent, right? So it's,
Yep.
just give people options and choices to take care of their situation or their issues as quickly as they can.
Absolutely. And I think, like for back at that time, even today, like I think that leaders like you have always just had like really two levers. And I think one is offshoring. The second one is automation. I think that there's a lot more faith in automation now, but I think kind of like we try to start these episodes usually with just some news commentary. And I think the one we have for today is the Keep Call Centers in America Act. I think it's a bipartisan one with Gallagher and Jim Justice. And this thing is older than the contact center. It's existed perennially, both in the US, in the UK, where like there's this like wave of offshoring, onshoring, offshoring, and onshoring. And I remember talking to you about, your visits to these locations. And I think that, automation today is in some places improving, in some places actually making it harder to get to those humans. But one thing that I found really interesting in talking to most leaders is that one of the main benefits, if you can do automation well, is in reducing the number of BPO partners you have to manage to get that extra staffing levels. But I think, in these podcasts, we try to talk about technology for CX, but also we have a wide kind of like startup audience and, like people who are like just getting into building this stuff. I think it'd be really interesting for them to hear about your experience with managing that kind of like human portfolio, its growth, like reductions, needs in special situations, and how that like shaped your life before and after AI was there to kind of like help deal with some of the demand.
Sure. I think these congressmen that are wanting to move everything back to the U.S. don't really understand how many people that is, right? And unfortunately, there aren't that many workers available in the U.S. to be able to handle the total volume that they would need to be to bring it back here. I struggle now to staff. I think most call centers struggle to find staffing. In 35 years, staffing has always been one of the hardest parts. And I know what's interesting for us is now it handles 30% roughly of my volume, which means and I didn't cut 30% of my staff. It's just 30% fewer people I have to hire. And what's interesting is, especially in the BPO space, when I was running contact centers, I had a site, 700 seat site. It was a telecommunications. Our attrition was easily 100% plus annualized. And what you find is you're not turning the whole staff over 100%, right? It's that bottom 25% that you churn 3 and 4 times. And so we were experiencing similar things here, not quite as high of attrition, but what I found is when the virtual assistant now handles 25-30% of my volume, and I've been able to not have to hire that bottom 30%, my attrition dropped in half. And so and I look back to my days in the BPO space and thinking, if I could cut my attrition in half, training costs and rehiring costs in the BPO space is huge, because technically they say we're not going to charge your customer for attrition training, right? Well, they do, because they have to build it in their margins, because it's their costs. They have to build it in their margins and charge them. So if you could cut that piece out, if you cut your attrition costs by 50%, that would be a huge impact on your margins. So, I look at the BPO space, and I just think this tool, there's so many opportunities where even just simple calls, just start with high
Yeah.
impact, low effort calls that they could handle this for their customers. And I think for the BPOs, I think if you don't go out to your customers and offer that solution, then your customers are going to do it themselves, and you're going to lose that revenue. I think a lot of them are nervous of thinking of offering a
Yeah.
different solution that impacts their revenue.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I recently had an article with a friend of mine, Nathan, from Air Street Capital, just about like the changing nature of it. And, there are a lot of these funds that are looking to fund companies that will kind of like acquire BPOs and offer kind of like a fully integrated service between the humans and technology, doing the whole bit. How do you feel about the BPO's ability to actually be the one pushing and selling this kind of technology?
I'm a huge proponent. I think, a lot of them, I'm seeing, some of them trying to create their own and build their own internally. And I think back to how many years you've been around and the technology and the knowledge that you already have. And I don't know why, build versus buy. Do you go out and you find somebody and white label their what they've already built and help present that quickly to their customers, or do you want to try and build something for 2 or 3 years, and then by the time you build it, the technology is changing so
Yeah.
quickly that
It's
I
hard,
mean,
right?
yes,
Yeah, I mean, it's capital intensive. I think that for them, it's really just a matter of like, can they sustain the investment and then offer it? And I mean, there's always that tension where like they are cannibalizing their revenue base. So they're not really going to do it on a customer they already have because it's like, I don't know. I've always just been surprised with how unwilling customers are to allow a BPO to have a high margin on anything they're selling them. Perhaps because they're these punishers used to dealing with them that are there to ensure that they don't get overcharged. That, I felt, and I probably shouldn't be saying it out loud, but I feel like, a top procurement guy is a bit more lenient on, a relatively young AI startup because the promise is so high relative to a BPO where they're just like, don't stop punishing. But yeah,
yeah, I mean, a lot of I have a lot of great contacts and friends that are BPOs or CEOs in the BPO space, and I think a lot of them they all understand and realize that they've got to do it, but they're nervous to understand how do we do it effectively. I think the nervousness, like I say, the impact their current customers. But I think there's obviously the risk, and you've seen it, where the customer says, "Okay, we'll go directly to the
yeah,
AI company," and then you lose that revenue altogether. So I think the ones that are going to be smart are going to be able to partner and use that. I mean, they offer solutions. They offer, here's what your cost that would be domestic. Here's your cost nearshore. Here's your cost offshore, and here's your cost if we use AI, right? So just put a package together that gives them options to be able to choose those solutions
yeah.
and keep your margins. You're going to keep margins on all of it. It's going to be cheaper than maybe for an agent, but I think that's the way that they need to start going. That's my opinion.
Yeah, yeah, no, no, for sure. I mean, I agree. I think like, when you think of this, the new wave of agentic AI and everything that, we've been doing together, both to give you like that ability to just pick up every phone call. Like going past that, when you think of like hospitality in particular, how do you think that like automated voice and just automated customer experience will change it going forward in the next few years?
Look, I think when I look at the ability to answer phones, what's interesting to me is how many people still call, right? Because
Yeah,
I can't tell you the last time that I called to make a hotel reservation or an airline reservation or car rental, right? You do it online, you do it self-service, but calling, as long as you do, and that's what we started, right? Was
yeah,
with reservations. I said, hey, my customers can make reservations online. Why can't I just teach a robot to book it for them, do the same thing? So that's kind of the direction we went, and now it's expanded and doing awesome.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
but I think that process of people just wanting to get their issues taken care of as quickly as possible. I joked with my CFO probably 5 years ago before we started. I said, I want to make it so easy for people to make a reservation. They just pick up their phone and say, Siri, Alexa, can you make me a reservation at the Golden Nugget tomorrow night? And have it say, look at your offers, look at your ability, take your credit card on your phone. It's already in there, and book your reservation and make it that quick, right? So I think that's the technology. As you get into agentic now, and just not just giving people information, but actually doing stuff for them. I think that's the key, and moving forward, and how you make it easy for people to get their issues taken care of.
Yeah, I mean, I'm hugely excited about that, and especially kind of like in the context of the contact center, the ability to actually do everything that your agents can do. I mean, I think when we started working together, we got the first use case up and running quickly, but then there was the whole kind of like, how do we support the full experience? How do we fetch the APIs? What's going on in the back end? And, not just in hospitality. In fact, I think there it took us a bit of time, but we figured it out. But whichever vertical we operate in, and we're one of the most horizontal players in our space, I feel like I'm sending a team of archaeologists in to an enterprise stack to figure out like API stacks, the needs, which integration partner will ask for what, how much will this be charged for, can it even be done? Or if it cannot be done, like what do we need to change? And then, together between you, the business buyer, and us, we're kind of like playing CIO with like, okay, you got to flip this thing in, add this thing, and then we can do that. And it's like a giant mission tree of just like everything that you have to put in place to transform that channel. And then, with agentic stuff, I think the computer use modules are the exciting bit. I think they're not yet there, but they will be there quickly, where hopefully then our agent just sits behind the screen, much like your agents do today. And at that point, it just reduces the barrier to entry of doing that reservation, because we no longer have to have the APIs, signatures, permissions, but instead, and I think the hardest thing, I'd be curious to get your take on it, is getting comfortable with us putting this entity inside your stack that is able to do whatever your agent would be. Because if you're willing to do that, I think we'll soon be able to kind of like just skip ahead in a lot of these things and do much of what previously would have taken us a lot of IT support, and then cost, right?
Right. No, I think that was one of the great things about you guys, because we started, it was just very simple use case, and the great thing I love about our partnership is anytime I've come to you, I've had visions of, hey, I'd love to be able to do this, I'd love to be able to do that, and it was never, no, we don't do that. It was, let's figure out how to make that happen, right? I didn't have a lot of the resources internally, and that was the great thing, is you guys had the engineers. I could say, this is what I want to do, and you guys just went out and started building. So this is what we can do, and how to make that happen, right? So you've always been open to looking at how do we make things better, how do we get smarter, how do we do things. So I love that about our relationship.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think that like the whole ability to have these forward deployed engineers that get stuck in and learn about the tech stack there and what's possible, what's not, and I think communicate candidly around what we can and cannot do has been really important. I think equally like, your patience with us in many places where, we hit some snags, something didn't work, I think it really has been a partnership. And I think that a lot of people, when they think of buying AI, don't really know just what goes into it, right? In terms of, I think that at this point you're one of the, most experienced subject matter experts of what AI can do for automated voice. I think there are a lot of people coming now that were the first wave of these, like, visionary adopters, where people are just expecting to plug something in as if it's electricity and go like, all right, like AI's in, like it's done, right? And I think
Right.
that it's kind of like a bit of a rude awakening for a lot of them.
Yeah. Yeah. I think a lot of people, now everybody says, "Oh, we got to get the AI." Like I mentioned before, everybody wants AI, but I think where because people, I've been on the board of the Contact Center AI Association, and I get people all the time say, "How do I, you've done this. How do I do it? How do I do it?" And I really kick back to them and say, you need to figure out why first.
Yeah,
Why?
yeah, yeah.
Where is it your customers have challenges? What makes it hard for your customers to do business with you? And is there technology that you can put in place to make it easier for them? So in my case, I was abandoning all these calls. I couldn't answer these, simple calls, and you guys fixed it. So, but I think you got to figure that out, reason why first, and then implement the solutions that fix it, instead of just going out and just throwing AI out there and thinking it's going to magically solve all your problems. So if you do it smart, you do it the right way, which you guys helped me do that. I mean, you saw the Forrester report that showed the ROIs. You know, we were part of that, and to see those ROIs are real, and if you do it right, it gives your customers a better experience, and it helps your bottom line.
Yeah, and look, I mean, I've always loved that. You know, we have such a big footprint in hospitality, right? Well, from you guys to other like casino groups, hotel groups like Marriott, restaurant groups, because there's something, you know, there's like the one side of the spectrum, kind of like where you have like 12,000 agents and some technology gets that down to 9,000. And at that point, it's quite like a calculated, you know, like CFO and COO with a pen go, this is to be done, click. They don't even know what it does for the experience. Whereas what I've always found in hospitality is like everyone there knows how it works. People are very like oriented towards operations, towards the experience. And I think if you guys want to do it and then like we achieve success, that was like I think the most impactful thing for us around people believing that AI is there to be a force for a better experience, not just like a CFO's toolkit for cutting operational expenses, right?
Right. No, and I think that's one thing I told you in the beginning. I said, hey, I'll be your guinea pig, right? You want to try some new things? Let's see if we can do this, see if we can do that. So I've always been open to that solutions to see what we can do to make it better. And ultimately, you know, my thought is you automate everything you can,
Yeah.
but also give your customers options. We also know that there's still a lot of people that just want to speak to a live person. And
Yeah.
I think studies show that, you know, 70% of the people say they'd rather speak to a live person. But
Yeah.
100% of the people just want to get their issue taken care of quickly and
Yeah.
efficiently. So how do you do that? They would much rather use a virtual assistant than wait 30 minutes on the phone waiting for a live person. So if you can give them
Yeah.
options and you make it easy for them to do that, and once they start doing it, I think a lot of it is training people because they've had bad experiences. Once they start having good experiences, they adopt it better. But I think that's going to be the process over time is getting people to realize that these virtual assistants really can help you if you give it the opportunity. And
Yeah.
changing people's mindsets is going to be the key.
Totally. And you know, I think there's a lot of bad experiences to undo. So despite all the kind of like adoption, there's still quite a heavy baggage of those past experiences. When you think of kind of like, you know, you're on the kind of contact center AI associations board, like what else are you seeing in the wider industry that is interesting with AI changing customer experience as a whole?
Well, I think you know everything from the conversational voice to the back end, the agent automation, right? Looking at agent, uh, what is the agent doing? How's the agent handling the calls? And you know we've moved from our initial you know scripted bot to a Gen AI bot, and I think we're seeing some great successes. So it's giving more opportunities to be able to understand and answer more questions. The key, I think, is going to be understanding when it speaks to the virtual assistant and it wants to speak to an agent, and we understand why it wants to speak to an agent, then
Yeah.
follow that call to the agent and see how does the agent handle that call type, and how do all my agents handle that call type, and to be able to integrate how agents handle the calls, integrate it back into how the virtual assistant handles those calls, and really you work together as a team, right? It's not virtual assistant is one thing and agents are a separate thing. I think you all have to be the same and work together in providing, helping, and providing. Agent assist, I think, is one thing that I see a lot of. You know, people wanting some virtual AI to be able to pop up. You know, this is what you should how you should handle this call. Your virtual assistant already has that stuff and it could handle it for the customer, but they want to speak to an agent. So he goes to an agent. The virtual assistant is in the background still helping the agent, but they could have helped the customer themselves. So
Totally.
that's
Totally.
top.
Another one of our customers, after working with us for I think about 2 years, told me about the initial pitches from vendors that did like Asian assist things, and it was really funny because she asked them like, hey, okay, well, does it work all the time? Oh, it's extremely accurate, reliable, et cetera, et cetera. She was like, yeah. They're like, yeah. well, why wouldn't I just have it talking to the customer then? And I was like, and like it fell through. But I think for a lot of people, it is kind of like where it flips over. Like they've been told to buy AI. Maybe they don't even have such a big problem. Otherwise, they would be thinking a bit more shrewdly and directly, right? And then, yeah, I mean, they're putting the technology. I mean, like I think part of it is the BPO experience where if you're churning 100% of the whole thing, but as you said, it's probably churning over the bottom third like 3 times over. Like they don't know what's going on. And I've done it when we started the company. I deliberately went into a few of the customers' contact centers and I was like, put me on the phone, right? And look, I studied the materials and stuff for, a few hours and, behind a specific skill queue so that I'm doing the same thing. I was petrified because like it's quite daunting. It's kind of like, someone gives you like a tennis bat and goes like, okay, like you're gonna have Novak Djokovic on the other side serving at you, and you're like, well, like he's probably gonna kill me if he hits me with the ball, right? And
Right.
daunting. So I think for them it might be just the promise of getting those guys ramped or getting them to be more accurate,
Yeah.
or
I agree. I think even myself when I hire, because all my agents are domestic, but when I hire new people, to be able to have some type of help and support for my new agents to get up to speed quicker because with having that knowledge, I can tell them where to go find it, right? But they don't always know doing searches. But if I could just prompt it to them, it would make that time go much quicker. I think when you talk about BPOs. I mean, there's certain calls, I've had my business in the Philippines before and great people, and they follow a script very well. But if you get off script, sometimes it gets a little more complex. It's a little harder for them. So, but my virtual assistant can do basically the same thing. So,
yeah,
why would I send my business out there when I can get a virtual assistant at cheaper price to be able to handle the same issues? And then the more complex stuff, people, they get somebody international, the American, that's I think is legislation where they say they want to bring it back in because people think they want to speak to American. And now you got
yeah,
the different companies out there that are doing the accent neutralization stuff, right, to make it sound like you're speaking to more of
yeah,
an
yeah,
American. And it really is, it really comes down to, you got a good core of people who are knowledgeable and can help more complex stuff. Let your virtual assistant handle the simple stuff that you don't have to, and then you can train your core people, and then maybe you have enough people in the U.S. to do it. I don't know, but
yeah. I mean, like I mean, we all know what the demographic pyramid looks like. Well, around the Western world, right? Well, around the world mostly, right? And
right,
it's you think of like just like the shape inverting, and yet like we have these products that are more and more complicated. So we see more customer contact overall in voice and chat everywhere, right? And like whether it's like swinging 5% up or down for one channel or the other is almost like immaterial. That's why I never really bothered much around like our positioning with one and the other, even though we do both. But when you think of the future of that contact center and those agents, right, especially those kind of like high empathy, very knowledgeable people in your business, right, that have been with you for many years. I mean, they're really core ops people. They're not contact center, right? And giving
right,
them the ability to kind of like branch out into other parts of the org to like surface demand and other things like my thoughts are that their jobs just get more and more interesting as these tools get better because it kind of shifts from like 80% to like onboarding new people, interviewing new people, like checking that they're doing an okay job into like, okay, I know that it will reliably do what I told it for simple calls. Let me look at kind of like the edge cases where it didn't work and reprogram it, right? And that's something we're
sure.
doing a lot of work on, with you guys. But how did you find the whole generative switch from the old intent-based models?
Um, it was interesting at first. Here's what's interesting is, I loved my voice that we had because we said, hey, this is what I wanted to sound like, and so I've always loved the voice of the live talent that we started out with, and so when we started to go to generative AI and Rob gave me a few voices to listen to, and I listened to them. I thought, yeah, that's pretty good, but I really like my voice, and
Yeah,
so I believe what you did is you cloned her, right? So and so then I still had my same voice. It was awesome, and so that part of it seemed still very very natural.
yeah,
And then when asking it questions, it seemed to go generative. Before obviously it was scripted, right? We recorded a script, and I knew exactly how it was going to respond to the script. And now it's a little more, it's more conversational, right? And
yeah,
it's more natural you can talk to it, and it responds in a more natural conversational way. And so I liked that. You know, there were obviously some struggles in the beginning, saying, "Oh, wait, we need to change this, we need to update this." As long as you keep the guardrails in, and you know, we have the knowledge base now where we can go in and we can. I think those are some of the cool things. Being of the generative gives me more control now that I can ensure that, you know, hey, we just changed our resort fees here. I need to go in and just change that rate, right? Instead of having to re-record it all over again. So it makes things
I think you remember
easier.
yeah, I mean, you remember the previous thing, and I think that like, you know, we spent years trying to get those things to look as kind of like intuitive as possible. But you remember, I mean, not only it kind of looked like, you know, an action thriller, and you know, they get to the bomb, they open it up and see all those wires, right? It kind of like felt like we were always giving customers that in the past. And now, with kind of like LLM first models, it's a lot easier to just kind of like expose the knowledge base and have the model figure out a lot of it.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, it's been interesting. You know, before when it's scripted, I knew what path I was going to take my customers down, right?
Yeah.
And now it goes it can go some different ways in a good way, right? It's not the customer if in the middle they want to change something in the middle. It's much easier to be able to make those switches and changes along the way in a conversation. And so I think I found it to be. It's obviously the way of the future. You got to go that way, right? That's the first step for what we're doing. And now as we get into more agentic, and like you said, we get into letting it really be an agent, right, and be one of my team members, is going to be it's going to be interesting.
Yeah. Well, look, we're hugely excited about everything that we're doing with you. You can be confident that all the kind of like new releases and stuff will go to you first, and I'm really excited about a lot of the things that we're pushing in that direction.
Yeah, I'm excited to explore and grow. And like I said, I love you guys. You know, we've been partners for now 4.5 years, and I look for a lot of. I mean, you're part of what we do. Right? Everything we do, we think, well, how does Poly integrate with all this? How does we do? So, a lot of the
Really,
decisions we
I
make
think
is all part.
one of the happiest encounters was, I think it was maybe a year and a half ago, back in Houston when Rick, your CFO, kind of like from the other side of the room, he's like AI guy, and I was like, oof, I've made it. I'm your AI guy. And I say that with a lot of kind of like joy because yeah, it really is like, you know, kind of like with like BPOs or anything else, like this stuff is an extension of your brand, and we take that like so seriously.
Yeah. Well, you are, and we appreciate all you do, and look forward to integrating more and more and doing more stuff.
Absolutely. Well, Brian, I look forward to seeing you later this week in person. Thank you so much for agreeing to be on our podcast. And I look forward to kind of like seeing people's reactions. For everyone watching, please like, share, subscribe. I've been told by the team that I must start doing this in that podcast. So thanks for watching, Brian. Thanks for being here with us.
Thank you very much. Great to see you. Talk to you soon.